Okay, so we are discussing anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration occurs without oxygen. It occurs in cytoplasm and less ATP is produced per glucose molecule. These are the points that you already can recall from your O level. Anaerobic respiration occurs in two pathways: the lactate pathway, which occurs in human muscles where no carbon dioxide is produced, and the other pathway is alcoholic fermentation in microorganisms, for example, yeast, where carbon dioxide is produced. This alcoholic fermentation is the same process जो तुम लोगों ने you have seen in O levels where bread making में डो तुम बनाते थे तो वो ही यूज करते थे. इवन पिज्जा का डो बनता है तो वो alcoholic fermentation ही तुम यूज कर रहे हो तो ब्रेड में और केक का डो बन रहा उन सब में. Anyhow, what is lactate pathway? Lactate pathway may inside the muscles of mammal, be it any mammal, uske muscle में inside the muscles glucose is there in the cytoplasm. It will be converted to pyruvate. You know, one glucose breaks into two pyruvate molecules and two hydrogens are removed and two ATPs are made. For simplicity's sake, we are saying that glucose is converted to two pyruvates, but we are considering the fate of one pyruvate here, thinking that the other pyruvate got a chance to enter the mitochondria since oxygen was available. So for this pyruvate, oxygen was not available. It had to stay within the cytoplasm for further metabolism. One ATP was produced from this pyruvate by substrate level phosphorylation when two hydrogens got removed. Bonds of this molecule, the intermediates between glucose and pyruvate, they underwent changes and rearrangement of bonds resulted in production of ATP. Now, the hydrogens which are removed from glucose are added to NAD and it becomes reduced NAD within the cytoplasm. Since reduced NAD cannot enter into the mitochondria since oxygen is not available, reduced NAD must stay within the cytoplasm and get regenerated. We all know that reduced NAD in aerobic conditions go inside the mitochondria and it gets regenerated by oxidation and it uses the electron transport chain and proton motive force and chemiosmosis to produce 2.5 ATPs per reduced NAD molecule. This is not possible right now because oxygen is not available for this pyruvate and reduced NAD must stay within the cytoplasm. So how this reduced NAD will regenerate itself? It loses hydrogen and it gets oxidized and it gets regenerated. The hydrogen which is removed from this reduced NAD are added to pyruvate. The enzyme lactate dehydrogenase will catalyze this reaction and pyruvate will convert to lactate. You can see that hydrogens initially removed from glucose are added to pyruvate to form lactate. Lactate is C3H6O3. The enzyme which is required for this is lactate dehydrogenase. The enzyme is named dehydrogenase because this is an enzyme which will catalyze the reversible reaction of lactate to pyruvate conversion as well. Since this enzyme was discovered with the reversible reaction first going backward, that lactate was converted to pyruvate using this enzyme. That's why this enzyme was named lactate dehydrogenase to start with. Later on, it was discovered that pyruvate to lactate conversion is also carried by lactate dehydrogenase, so the name is still the same. It's the same enzyme which carries on both the reactions, the forward and backward reactions, depending on the Le Chatelier's principle, which is normally applied to reversible reactions. We know that when lactate builds up in the muscle, it causes fatigue, and you cannot allow a lot of lactate to stay within the muscle because the muscle will get fatigued and you won't be able to continue your exercise. So blood through bloodstream, lactate is removed and it is sent to the liver. In liver, it turns into carbon dioxide and water, and these are the waste products of respiration. Or it can be turned into pyruvate. You know, pyruvate may, if it is converted, you can begin a link reaction again with this pyruvate, or it can be converted to glycogen, and glycogen, as you all know, is a long-term energy storage molecule. All these three things will occur only if oxygen is available, and this is the oxygen debt that we'll talk about later in the class. This is alcoholic fermentation occurring. Alcoholic fermentation may be this. We can see the first step is exactly the same. Glucose turned into pyruvate. ATP was, one ATP was made. Two hydrogens were removed. Reduced NAD was produced. Reduced NAD will need to undergo oxidation to become NAD. Now pyruvate, instead of converting into lactate, it loses a carbon dioxide. There is a reduction of one carbon here. So pyruvate loses the carbon dioxide. This is where the carbon dioxide product comes in alcoholic fermentation, and this causes ethanol, the aldehyde to be produced. This ethanol then takes up the hydrogens which were there in the reduced NAD and turns into ethanol. and the enzyme ethanol dehydrogenase uses is used up in this process. So what do we see? We see that again the enzyme ethanol dehydrogenase is the enzyme that can carry on the reversible reaction, the interconversion of ethanol to ethanol or ethanol to ethanol, depending on whether hydrogens are added or removed. Again, this is the same enzyme. Similarly, this enzyme was also discovered with the backward reaction first. That's why it was named as ethanol dehydrogenase. Anyhow, coming back, in anaerobic pathways, be it alcoholic fermentation or lactate pathway, less energy is produced because energy stays trapped in lactate and ethanol. What do you mean by this? Because lactate and ethanol are not fully broken. They still carry carbon and hydrogen bonds. They still carry a lot of hydrogens which have not been extracted or removed. Only one reduced energy was produced. And since hydrogens are still attached to this molecule, it was not used up to produce ATP. That's why limited energy is produced. Outline the similarities and differences between lactate pathway and alcoholic fermentation. You can go through the point that I have listed here, similarities and differences. These are very straightforward points. And you can just go through and scroll through these points. If there's any confusion, you can ask me. These are very straightforward, and I don't think there will be any problem here because I have mentioned them with in bullets only, so that it's easy for you to remember. Now come to oxygen debt. What happens in oxygen debt? Let's see the graph here. There's a graph which tells you how the mammalian muscle is using up oxygen when it is at rest, or it is during exercise, or it is in the recovery phase. Rest means that the muscle is at resting state. It is not contracting and relaxing actively. During exercise, a muscular exercise is initiated, and in recovery, fatigue ho chuki hai, and now the muscle must undergo recovery. Now, what actually happens on the y-axis, you can see oxygen uptake. You can see that the baseline oxygen uptake is 0.2 dm cube during the rest conditions, which continue for 0 to 2 minutes. Then demand increase as oxygen, or as exercise is started. At 2 minutes, you start to exercise. At the second minute, you start to exercise. You can see that the oxygen uptake level start to increase, which means the more oxygen will be delivered to your muscles. Since the muscles are actively respiring, they need more oxygen now. But this oxygen cannot be given at the same moment where the demand increase. The time will go from second to third minute, third to fourth minute. And yes, gradually oxygen uptake is increasing. Why is that so? Because your heart and lungs, they take about 2 minutes to meet the increased demand. And in these 2 minutes, lactate pathway will occur, and it will provide additional ATP to the muscle, and oxygen deficit builds up. Means that additional ATPs will be produced here, will be provided to the muscles, so you can continue with the exercise. By the by the end of this time, you can see that oxygen is available to at 2.5 dm per minute. So yes, you continue exercise for a few more minutes, about 2.5 more minutes you continue exercise. But since anaerobic respiration had occurred, lactate had formed, your muscles will feel fatigued, and you can't continue exercise beyond this point. So you will settle down, and the muscle will go in recovery phase. What is recovery phase? It will continue from the 6.5 minute here and to the 25th minute here. And you can see that post exercise, oxygen uptake gradually slows down. And this oxygen uptake gradually slows down. Why? Because this oxygen deficit, which was built initially, you need to pay back this oxygen debt. So the payback of oxygen deficit is called the oxygen debt. You need this oxygen now in the recovery phase to make sure that lactate is removed from the muscles, and it is sent to the liver for conversion into glycogen or pyruvate or carbon dioxide and water, as well as the oxygen which is now coming in oxygen debt, which is a post exercise oxygen uptake. What it will do, it will make sure more oxyhemoglobin is available to the body. It will ensure a better metabolic state of the organs after exercise. This is why it is suggested by all the exercise experts that you should exercise in morning and not later in the day, because when you exercise in early morning or sometime when you wake up, you actually increase your metabolic state of the organs for the whole day. So you will keep on burning more calories the whole day. Compare it to the other stance where you exercise at night or at in the evening, when you spend most of the day. Now when you exercise, you will have limited number of hours before you go to sleep, or before your body starts to rest. So this is the main thing regarding oxygen debt and oxygen deficit. This is it that I discussed today.